Welcome to HP Tuners Subaru Training Part 28. In this training tutorial, we're going to be taking a look at doing breakpoint rescaling. Breakpoint rescaling allows us to characterize a higher horsepower or air mass registration in things like our engine load that's used in spark timing, variable cam control, as well as our target air fuel. We need to make sure we're tracking a higher load registration so that if we're turning our boost pressure up, we're having our fuel and spark timing and variable cam control following suit. We also are going to take a look at doing engine RPM rescaling so that if we're turning the engine RPM up on our engine, we have a built engine, we're able to allow the fuel and spark timing calculations to track to our higher RPM properly. We're going to have a lot to cover. Let's jump in so we can check this out. Okay, so let's get started. We're going to be taking a look at doing breakpoint rescaling in our Subaru applications. Now we have to go and do breakpoint rescaling. If we're revving our engine higher than stock RPM values, we need to go in and change a lot of the tables in our Subaru ECU to reference the higher RPM that we plan on spinning the engine to. We also have to go in and do breakpoint rescaling. If we're going and turning up the boost pressure or making a lot more horsepower than stock, we'll find our engine load calculation will drastically change. And if we're not going in and doing a breakpoint rescale, things like our spark timing, our AVCS, or even our target air fuel can be thrown off, and we may not be referencing things properly in terms of that amount of load that we're calculating, the amount of air mass we're flowing in our engine. And we need to make sure that things are all taken into account. So what we're going to do here is jump in. I have a sample calibration file coming from our sample calibration file folder in our Subaru course packet. We can see this is a 2018 STI sample. Let's open that up and let's take a look at some of the tables and things that we can do for breakpoint rescaling. So if we jump in here to engine and we go across here to spark, we're first going to talk about rescaling our spark timing tables here. So this is going to be one of the first things I always do. Now if we take a look at the base table, this is the main table. This is going to be our TGVs open with the engine warmed up. Now we've talked about spark timing and working within these tables and some other tutorials already, so everything here should be familiar. Now looking at our main spark timing table, we find our left axis here is based on engine load in grams per rev, and the top axis is based on engine speed. Now, if you're not revving your engine any higher than stock, then you don't need to go and do an RPM rescale. If you are going to be revving your engine higher than stock, let's say you put on a larger turbo or you put bigger cams in or the engine's built and you want to be able to spin it higher in RPM, that's fine, but you need to go in and do breakpoint rescale across many tables. The spark timing tables would be one table that you do have to do that rescale in. You have to consider where you're going to spin your engine to. Let's say we're going to turn our engine RPM up to 8,000 RPM. We'd want to go in and do a breakpoint rescale and account for a couple hundred RPMs over the maximum engine speed we anticipate revving the engine to or putting the rev limiter at. That gives us a little bit of wiggle room so that it's able to track a higher engine speed in case we change the main rev limiter. We don't have to go back in and perform a breakpoint rescale. Let's go in and do that right now in our main spark timing table here. So if we jump in, we see engine speeds at the top here. We can click on our top axes in our gray area right here. If we right click, we can go in here to column axes. The engine RPM or engine speed is going to be a column. We see that they're looking here. They're going to be applied across here vertically. So if we go into our column axes and we go into edit, this is going to allow me to edit the breakpoints that we see at the top of the table here. So 6,800, we can see that value here. 800 RPM, we see that value here. If I plan on revving my engine to 8,000, which is realistic for a built Subaru EJ25 engine with cams, making the engine speed go much higher than that usually doesn't help a whole lot, but let's assume we're revving it to 8,000. I want to go and take my point here to 84 or 8,500. I want to go a couple hundred RPMs higher so that if I do change my rev limiter, I don't have to go back in here and do a breakpoint rescale again. I'm going to change this right now to 8,400. Now the next thing I need to do is blend my RPM shift and my breakpoint here from the top of the table, spread it out across the rest of the table. I usually leave my breakpoints alone for the first half of the table, 800 to 3,200 RPM. This is where we spend the majority of our time driving. We don't want to go back in and disturb any of our spark timing in this area. You can even stretch it out to 3,600. So what I'm going to do is grab my values from 3,600 to 8,400. I'm going to do a horizontal interpolation. Click our horizontal button. Now, if I click close here, notice it does a breakpoint rescale at the top of my table based on the axes we've just changed. Now, things that we need to consider with this, because we've changed our breakpoint rescaling at the top of the table in terms of engine speed, our spark timing that we're running in the table here will reference the new breakpoint. What we need to do is recognize how this table was laid out before. Our last column here was at approximately 6,800. What we want to do here is take our value here at 8,400. Thanks for checking out our teaser clip. If you want to see the rest of this video and more than 500 hours of current EFI training we have to offer, make sure you click right here. If you want to go and check out more teaser clips from this training course, click here, and you don't want to miss any of the videos we're going to be releasing on this channel, so make sure you subscribe and click here. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys later.